All right, I'll begin then. So today's talk, or my talk, is what's new in PebbleKit iOS 3.0. Maybe some of you already noticed it got published yesterday, so if you want to work with it, you can do it now. I want to do a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about. So first thing will be give a rough recap, what is PebbleKit in general, when do I use it, and then what are the new features in the PebbleKit, and also what do you have to do to get it working, because some APIs broke or some things changed, and you will have to do those changes. They are not many, but I will walk you through them. All right, so what is PebbleKit and when should I use it? Many apps will work better if they just use a JavaScript framework SDK that we have, mainly because then you don't have to worry about building two apps, one for Android, one for iOS. And if you just want to talk to a web service, it's better to do so. But sometimes you need native features like access to the camera or other things that JavaScript can't do. And that's a place where you normally should use PebbleKit for iOS or PebbleKit for Android. So in PebbleKit 3.0, we added two new large features. The first one is 8K app messages. Before you had, I think, 120 bytes you could send within one app message. So whenever you wanted to talk to your application, if it was more than 120 bytes, like a piece of text or something, you would always have to slice it up into multiple parts so that they fit in, and then you have to do all this message sending yourself. This can become tedious quite quickly, so right now you can use more than that. The one benefit you also get from it is because you always have to wait until the watch acknowledges your message. You have to wait for the acknowledgement, and this generates some overhead. So if you, depending on your use case, that might be just much more faster. One thing that you have to do though is you don't know whether your watch supports 8K. So what you have to do is you have to get the version of the watch, find out whether its capability flag 8K supported is set, and if it's set, then you can do it. Of course, this also depends on the app message inbox and outbox size that you have in your application. I guess many of you just use something like this, like take the maximum available and put it into app message open. If you compile with the latest SDK and your mobile app uses the new PebbleKit, then those functions will return 8,000. And the issue is that this memory is taken from your application. So if you have 8,000 for your inbox and 8,000 for your outbox, then you lose 16K. And I don't know, I think 24 it is for most apps, then you won't have much RAM anymore for your own application. So you really shouldn't do that. Something that might work better is just sending some amount that you want to use. Like in this case, just 500 bytes. But then, of course, you still have the issue that on your phone side, you don't know what you can send. You can't send the 8K because they will be too large, and you don't know if it's still an old watch. So in this case, I would recommend just send some kind of initialization message to the phone and then just use that value. The other feature that got added is Bluetooth LE. So the main reason why you want to have this is Pebble Time Round only speaks via LE with iOS. So if you want to support Pebble Time Round from your app, you have to use the new PebbleKit, otherwise it won't work. The other benefit though that you get from it is you finally have isolated app message sessions. So that's the current state. so the state before 3.0. When you had an app, it would start communicating with the watch, and it would do so by using a shared session. There were some APIs where you have to close it and open it. The problem is there's only one for the whole device. So if a second session comes in, it will take the shared session. The other app will lose it, and then Runkeeper in this case will continue to use it. That's not an issue if you don't have an app background kind application, like something that should provide a service. So if you just need it when your app is up front, but for background apps, this might be a problem. So now with the new LE transport, you will have a separate session for each application. So you don't have to care anymore about closing the session. Nobody will steal your session. Another nice feature is with the old shared session, you couldn't start communicating from the watch to the phone. You always had, the first message had to be sent from the phone. This is different now. By setting your app UID in your application, iOS will keep that string stored for you. So even if your app goes down, iOS will still know that this identifier is linked to your app. So now the watch app can then just talk to iOS. Whenever it sends a message, it will do so automatically, and will say, I want to talk to this app, and what happens is iOS will launch your app. Even if it got killed, although of course you have to have some specific UI background mode set for that to work. And also you will be launched in the background. You can't do everything in the background, like you can't open camera or something like that. Yeah, now let's come to the breaking API changes. One thing that always felt a little bit tedious was whenever you had to pass an app UID, you had to kind of put it through an NSUID, then convert it to NS data, or use bytes directly. That always felt off. Since iOS 6, I think, Apple added NSUID, and now you can just use it and pass it to the properties where necessary. You don't have to use NS data anymore. The other larger change is that Pebble Central now starts in a cold state. Before, whenever your app just launched, you would just go into, for example, here. Oh no, it's not here. You would just go into the Pebble Central, get the connected watches, and then start talking to them. That's not possible anymore. You first have to use a new run method. So this is the old style. You would just set up the centrals, set the delegate, set the app UID, and now the only thing that you have to change is like remove some lines, just use NSUID, and at the end you have to call central run. Only after you did this, it will start talking to devices. So I totally recommend doing this in a specific order. Like, don't call run first, then configure it, and then check whether there's a connected watch or something like that. Just do it like this. Configure your central, run it, and don't check the connected watches or last connected watch property. There won't be anything in there because it will take a few milliseconds to seconds for the watch to connect actually. So just wait for your delegate to get the call that the watch did connect. Other features are we finally have Swift support. So you could use Swift before, but you always had to do bridging header and a lot of tedious stuff. And also it didn't feel very good. So now we added all the nullability annotations and generic annotations. So if you want to use Swift, PebbleKit will work very nicely with it and it will feel really good. Another thing, I don't know if anyone cares, Apple introduced something new called bitcode, which is like sending, more or less it's sending source code to Apple instead of your binary. you have to decide if you want to do that. The one requirement though is whenever you use bitcode, all your libraries that you reference have to use bitcode too, otherwise it won't work. So PebbleKit won't stop you from doing that, but maybe some other library that you use. However, in Xcode 7.1.0.1, we got some issues. Apparently many libraries have it. Xcode starts complaining about some stuff. And I guess it will continue to break in future versions. So our recommendation is to not use bitcode at the moment. Just wait for Apple to sort this out, maybe in Xcode 7.2 or something. If you really want to do it though, come to speak to us. We'll try to find out what your specific setup needs to get it running. Whoops, that was fast. Okay, that's very fast. So one thing is, if you ever submitted a companion app to the App Store, into the Apple App Store, you always had to pass a MFI identifier. So now with LE, in theory, that wouldn't be necessary anymore, because we are not using. If you're using the LE transport, you're not using Apple's MFI accessory transport. However, I would recommend to still add this, and you need to actually, because otherwise you won't be able to talk to watches which don't talk via LE to your app. So like original Pebble or Pebble Steel. How to update? So I don't know if anyone of you uses CocoaPods. It is the recommended way to do to install PebbleKit. So in that case, it will be simple. Just update your pod file and put the new version in there. If you don't use CocoaPods, you can just grab the new framework from the link that's also shared on the doc that was sent around yesterday, or at this address. And you can just download it and drop it in your project and make sure you're linking against it, but Xcode should handle that automatically. So just drop it in, it should just work. In the last releases, there was some other framework called Pebble Vendor. We had some libraries like Coco Lumberjack, and they were all in there because we knew it might cause conflicts if you also use the same libraries. And even though we published the source, I guess nobody understood why we did this, and if you were using Coco Lumberjack, you had big issues. So we just stripped all of that out of PebbleKit, and we got rid of the Pebble Vendor framework altogether. So if you still have it in your project, and if you don't use any of those classes that are in there, just delete the file. You will just reduce the size of your binary, and yeah, just forget about it. So quick recap, why should you update to the new PebbleKit? Of course, new features like AK app messages and better background experience. Also, you support Pebble Time Round, and you're future-proof in the case that more Pebble models switch to the new LE transport. There's not a time frame yet for that, but we are thinking about it, and if that happens, you won't have to update anymore in the future. This will just work out of the box. And yeah, how? Just get the new PebbleKit framework, set your app UID at the start of your application, and then call run. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. If you have any questions, now's the time, or later. Right?
Unfortunately, I came in here a few minutes late, but
yeah.
3.0 works fine with all previous models of Pebble still, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And one more question. For background threading, I know I came in late again.
All good.
But is it still a one app thread? Like if I have two apps that communicate with Pebble, and I start one, and I'm using that, and I switch to the other, does the other connection get killed?
Well, let me think. It's not getting killed. So you're talking from one iOS application to two apps.
Yeah, because we want to make an app where you can always fetch data from our companion app.
Yeah.
And we worry. I read somewhere that on iOS there's only one available like thread. So if somebody else uses another companion app that uses.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. We got rid of that. So if you're having an LD transport, multiple apps can talk at the same time. They are not stealing your session anymore.
Okay. That actually is a unique use case though, because he's got multiple apps on the watch that are going to be talking back to that same companion app. Is there any issue there?
No, it will work. Although of course only one is up and running at one time frame, but you can just send it if your app is not running. It won't get acknowledged, and yeah, then you just have to react on it.
For non-LE connections, it will just be one session.
Yeah, non-LE will still be one session. We're trying our best. If you're doing like background, we delay the old classic sessions so that you're more likely to get the new one, but right now you don't have any direct control over it. So yeah, you should be getting LE if the watch supports it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
kind of question is that there was sort of a hack that I discovered talking to, it was one of the engineers last year, that if you call close session, then open session again, they'll sometimes clear up hangs on the old Bluetooth Classic. If you're using 3.0, is there sort of and you're having to talk to like a steel or a classic watch,
Yeah.
or a Bluetooth Classic, is there sort of an equivalent approach now? Because there's no closed session anymore.
Yeah, closed session got deprecated. It's still in there, but it got more or less renamed. So now there's release shared session, which only closes if the session if you have a shared one, which is something that you should do if you're a background app. If you aren't a background app, we will call it for you as soon as you go to the background.
Okay.
Yeah, but you should call this method still if you're using your phone.
We used to call closed session, there'd be the callback call on release shared session.
There isn't a callback because the callback originally also it was just called right after you called it, so it didn't make any sense.
You just called something directly after
Yeah.
release shared session, you have the same behavior then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basic question.
Okay. Any more questions?
Another one that's sort of, this is one that bugged me, Marcel, maybe you can answer it, but release update handler, what does it do and is it necessary?
So whenever a watch disconnects, all the update handlers will be removed anyway, and you have to re-add them. So you should add them also in the watch did connect delegate method. And if you just want to keep it around for a short time, like just in some other part of your application, that's the way how you can do this. You can just install it, wait for a message once, and then just release it or get rid of it right after that. So like having one-time expectations of messages. But I don't think many people will need that. So it's there if you really need it for some reason because of the structure of your application, but normally you should just do without.
Okay, yeah, it's not necessarily clear in the documentation.
Yeah.
The use case.
All right, we might update the documentation there. Okay.
One more question for everyone else. On wake from, like when you're having a message from a watch,
Yeah.
wake the app in the background, what's going to be called? Just your update handler, will that be called? Or how's the
Yeah, so what's happening is when you're started in the background, you have to, you should read up state restoration on iOS. So you get now you don't get a different callback. You just get the regular launch callback. That's still the place where you have to set up your app UID and the other handlers like.
your application did finish launching?
Yeah, exactly. And then the app update handler will be called. Yeah. Okay. One more, or is your to-do list finished?
I think we got most of them. I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Okay. I guess if you have more, we can talk later. So thank you again. And